Welcome to video 2. In this video, we'll get the ball moving and also look at colliders. So let's get a script on the ball just to get it moving. There'll be more that we'll need to do with it later on. Now we've got the sprite there already in our game. And again, like I said, you could check to see if it's the right size later on. But let's go ahead and put that script on. So make sure you're in the scripts folder. We'll create a new script, new C# script. And we'll call this, I guess, ball movement to keep consistent here. And so we'll just open that one up. And once that's open, like I said, we're going to do a few more things to it later on, but we'll get a good start here. Actually, one thing that I forgot that we should do, let's just pop back to Unity very quickly here, is this one is going to be moving and it's going to need to bounce off things and so on. We're going to sort of add force to it to get it moving and maybe want to change its velocity and so on. So what I'm going to do is go to the ball and add that rigid body component that we talked about before. So I'm just going to type in RI, there it is, rigid body 2D. So I'll put that on it. And again, gravity scale, we will set that to 0 so it doesn't fall off our game. Okay, good. Let's head back and there we go. Good. So we are on the ball movement. So we'll do what we did last time as well, and that is grab or create a rigid body 2D holder. So I'm just going to take this rigid body 2D. I'm not going to do that as serialized field because I know what's happening here from our last game. So we'll just call it RB2D again. And we'll do one more thing there. And I'll set it public again because we might want to change the speed of the ball later on with one of your actually, we'll make that float too, with one of your modifications perhaps. So I'm going to set that, just call it speed. Okay. At the start, what we'll do, and actually I'm going to change something a little bit up. I'm going to call it on awake. And I'll mention this in class if you want to look it up a little bit. There are different functions that begin right at the start of the game. Awake actually occurs a little bit before start, and it's kind of useful, if we're going to sort of be moving the ball and having to stop the velocity and so on. So I'm going to use the awake function, and like I said, we'll talk a little bit about that in class, but we'll grab the component again, grabbing that rigid body 2D. And there we go. So we just set that variable. And what we'll do is give it a velocity right away. So just below that, what we'll do is grab the RB2D and we can grab a bunch of components from it. So what we're going to grab is the velocity component. And it's kind of like what we were just doing before. We're going to create a new vector 2. And this is going to give us sort of the direction here. So again, we've got an X and Y coordinate system. So the velocity, and we'll draw this in class, but it's kind of like two arrows, right? Because it's a vector. And so we're going to have an X and a Y, and we'll have it moving in one direction. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of X and a little bit of Y. And this is just to get it, this is to get it to move it on a diagonal, okay? So what I've got here is -2, so that's coming towards the player. So towards the left is negative, and then I guess going down, because I've got on the Y, I've got -0.5f. So it's more going to the left than it is down, but it's sort of moving in that diagonal. So we'll just put that there just to get it to start. And I've also got one here just to sort of keep it going. So RB2D dot velocity. And what I'm going to do here, don't worry too much about this. We'll talk a little bit about it in class. I don't know if I don't really need this bracket around here, I don't think. Let's just do it this way. So vector 3, so let me just get that in, vector 3. So don't worry, this is in 3 dimensions here, but we'll talk a little bit more about it in class. We're going to normalize it, and we're going to do the RB2D dot velocity times the speed. Basically, we're just keeping the direction and then making sure that we can, modify sort of the speed here based on it. That's all that is. And I think that's good for the ball here. So let's just see if that works. So I'm just going to save it and go back here. make sure I put the script on the ball. I forgot to do that last time with the paddle. So there's the ball movement. Throw it on. Remember, your speed here is always set to, whatever. It goes to 0 if we haven't set it into the script. So we'll just get that on there. And we'll hit play. And we'll see what happens here. So there's the ball. Now, it was moving a little bit too fast, okay? There's a little bit of a gap, too, when it starts here. So I'm going to just slow this down, just for the purposes of play testing. I am a Pong expert, so I can play it at that speed, but just for us to see. Okay, so there it is. Now I want it to hit, ooh, and it goes right through. Okay, yeah, so what are we missing? Well, when we created these two objects, so the ball and the player, there was something missing. And that is a collider. We do not have colliders on here. So what I'm going to do is fix that right up. Just go add component. And we're going to add for this is our player paddle, we're going to add a box collider. So box collider 2D. And if I just sort of zoom in here, right, we can kind of see that green line around it. Just to make it very clear, I'll just turn off the sprite renderer. And you can see it's right there, okay? And so it did it perfectly, right? It's the right size. We're good. It's a box collider. Perfect. Now, the ball itself needs to have a collider as well. We're going to do a little bit of a, I don't want to say trick here, but we're not going to put a square collider on it, because if we used a square one, when it hits the, hits the paddle or hits the balls, it's going to do some odd things. It's going to sort of bounce off at an angle and so on. So the square of the ball is more a result of the lack of the original computers, consoles, being able to render a circle. Square is much easier than a circle, just mostly due to the number of pixels involved in trying to create a circle. So what we'll do here is we'll add a collider, but we're going to add a circle collider, not a box collider. So again, circle collider 2D, that's what we want. And again, probably the best idea is just zoom in on that and take a look to make sure that it looks reasonable. And obviously, yeah, you're going to miss those corners, but that's fine, right? So let's hit play again. See what happens. Make sure we've got collision. Good. Now, we do have collision there. It didn't bounce very well. It kind of looked like it was like going off, right? So this is another thing that we have to do here. What you'll notice is that on any sort of, well, there's the rigid body, but actually what I'm trying to look here is at the material on the collider. That seems a little bit odd because we talked about, colliders, or sorry, materials being more on like the art objects, like, applying material to something. What we're going to do here is create a material, a physics material 2D. So I'm going to come up into here and, I might want to create a separate folder for it. I'll just put it in the root of assets because, we're only going to have one of these, but we probably be a good idea to create a new folder. But just for ease here, I'm going to come down to Physics Material 2D. Click on that. There's Physics Material. Now, we could call it something. I'm going to call it Bouncy, okay? And then there's the friction, okay, and the bounciness. The friction means when you have a collision that it's going to lose a little bit of energy, okay? And so over time, if you have friction at whatever, anything less than 0, or anything, greater than 0, it is going to cause a little bit of loss of energy, therefore the thing is going to slow down. We don't really want that in this game. Theoretically, this game, the ball should keep bouncing forever. The bounciness, though. Now, again, you can look this up a bit and see. It's weird, you can put a number more than a 1, but really it's between 0 and 1, okay? And 1 being the maximum bounciness. So we're going to put that on there. Let's go back to the ball. Physics material. So again, you can either drag it in, whoops, that's fine, or click on the little dot, and we've only got the 1, so we can do that. Same thing here. Let's take a look. So hopefully it bounces better. Now there might be one more thing that we need to do. Well, actually that worked out pretty well. Okay, so it bounced it back that way. Wasn't quite what I assumed. I think I got the corner there, so let me just see here. Should bounce nice. There we go. I think I hit it right on the corner. So you can see it's bouncing off. Now, obviously this is a bit of a problem It's going off, okay? And going off forever. So we don't want it to be able to go past sort of the boundary here, right? We don't want it to be able to go, it should hit this and bounce back in. So what we need is just a couple colliders, and we can put those in pretty easily. So what I would do, you know, none of these really would put that collider on nicely. So what I'm going to do is create an empty, and in that we'll put a collider on the top and a collider on the bottom. So simply come into here, into our game objects, and we're going to create an empty. Now for an empty, so we'll call these our boundaries, top, bottom boundary, I guess. And we'll set that to reset the position, right? 0, 0, 0. Okay, so that's centered. And we got our top and bottom boundaries. And all we'll do is we will find a box collider. And there it is. So it's just like that one. Then we can move it around and so on. So I think the easiest way to do this is, well, you know, you can just play with this probably. So I'm just going to stretch it out just so that it's right to the edges. You could go further. It doesn't really matter. So that's fine. And then I'm going to move it up on the y-axis or whatever, either way. And I might just go something like that. Okay. And I'm going to do another one on there as well. So what I can do, I believe, is I could copy the component and I could paste as new. So there it is again. Now it's right over top of it. So all I have to do, if this was positive 5.31, I'm just going to set that to minus 5.31. And that's the nice thing about having it kind of symmetrical, right? So there they are, top and bottom. The only other thing I should do, and I could have done it, whoops, is add the physics material. That's interesting. Oh, Mr. Fleming, you messed up. These are box colliders. We want box colliders 2D. Good for those of you that noticed that. Okay, so sorry about that. So let us, the size again, whoops, there we go. I always say, if you have to do it twice, you do it better the second time. So that was 4.31 or 5.31. Roughly there, fine. And then, sorry, now you know how to duplicate it. Copy component. It's weird you have to click back up here to paste it again, but that's fine. And then we'll just simply put a minus in front of that. And then what I was trying to say about a minute ago, there they both are, was that our physics material, bouncy. Okay, let's take a little look here and then we'll end this video just to make sure it's kind of working. So it hits. It should go off the wall. Now it didn't bounce back nicely. And I think the biggest reason for that is just that it's so slow. So let's just bump up the speed a little bit and hopefully that will fix it. So I'm just going to pop it up to 8 there. Be ready to play. And I think it's just because it's so slow, it's just not getting enough of a bounce there. There we go. Yeah, so that was pretty good. Okay, so a nice little bounce. Now we'll talk about fixing things up a little bit after, what we can do to prevent a few things from happening. Let's just try it again here. There we go. Yep, that's nice bouncing. Okay, so what we will do next, and make sure you're saving your scene. I haven't saved a scene here yet. Make sure you save it. What we'll do next is get the sort of the other paddle, and we'll use it, make an AI for that, for our game at least here, and then also detecting when it leaves the player area. We need somehow for it to, stop playing and give someone a point. So we'll see how far we can get in the next video, but that's where we're going towards.